There we are. We are live on this beautiful Monday afternoon for another episode of your weekly weekend news roundup with Go FUD Yourself. Today, obviously, Ceara's not here unless she drastically changed her appearance. But we're joined by our good friend Brendan from Degen Roundtable. How you doing, brother?
Hey, JD. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be on the episode for the first time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Super excited. We've for anybody that wants to check out Degen Roundtable, they do tons of podcasts and they do a whole bunch of analysis and discussion and of all things crypto. Great group. I've been on their pod a few times. I spectate often. So check them out. Brendan, where can they find out about Degen Roundtable?
Yeah, on YouTube. Just you can see my name right there, Degen Roundtable. Pretty easy to find. And yeah, we're just trying to. It sounds like we're degenerates, but I feel like everyone in the cryptosphere has a little bit of degen in them. But really, we want to keep people from getting wrecked, teach people the basics, and keep people up to date on what's happening, similar to what you guys do a bit as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, it's kind of hard to not address the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about the attempted assassination in a little bit, but it's later on in the podcast. But we are going to talk a lot today about Mt. Gox. We're going to talk a little bit about the House of Representatives in the United States and the SEC regarding these accounting guidelines. We're going to talk about, obviously, Donald Trump and kind of what happened and what the fallout, so to speak, or at least the recourse has been, both positive and negative. Excuse me. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the German government BTC balance. So we've got a ton of stuff to chat about today. Super excited to get to most of it. Let's freaking go. Man, that video almost ended too soon. I had a mouthful. I was trying to inhale some food and almost ended up on video chomping. Anyways, all right. So Mt. Gox. I mean, this is like kind of one of the oldest drama stories or soap operas really in the space. The hack, actually, I'll read the article first and then we'll start talking about it. So Mt. Gox, Bitcoin billions are being repaid. How did we get here? So it's been more than a decade, 13 years actually, since the hack of Mt. Gox in 2011. And creditors are finally receiving their refunds in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. The repayment process began recently following years of legal and technical preparations. Mt. Gox was once the world's largest Bitcoin exchange until it went bankrupt in 2014 after a massive hack and resulted in the loss of 850,000 Bitcoin. A couple notable dates here. The hack was in 2011, and the exchange collapsed in 2014, which is kind of interesting. You lose 850,000 Bitcoin and somehow didn't go bankrupt for 3 years. No idea how that happened, but it's been a very, very long time. And this is one of the kind of the unfortunate downsides, I think, of the space is it just takes a long time to figure this stuff out and make people whole. Were you in the space when Mt. Gox happened, Brendan?
No, I got in after Mt. Gox, but it's been something that I've been following now for many years because, as you know, this podcast is called Go FUD Yourself, and I feel like Mt. Gox has been one of the biggest FUD news articles for years. It seems like every year something comes out about it and we see a little drop in the market, but we haven't seen that this year. I feel like people are just so desensitized by Mt. Gox. And I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but I feel like the market's a little decentralized by hearing about it so often now.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's concerns, I suppose, about, billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin potentially flooding the market. That being said, I would probably expect that only a small proportion of the people that are getting their assets back are going to immediately liquidate given where we're at in the market. But who knows? I mean, it'll probably be something that we'll talk about for a little while, and people will assume that it's impacting the market in a fairly significant way. Kind of like this the German government selling off Bitcoin thing, which we're going to talk about later. To me, it was a huge, giant nothing burger, and I was like, who cares? Mt. Gox, again, I like it more as a feel-good story. At least the majority of the people that had lost assets on the exchange are going to be somewhat made whole. And that to me is, they're getting something back. And given market appreciation since 2011, they're probably going to end up better off than if they had the Bitcoin in their wallet, because I'm sure they would have sold it and done other stuff. So anyways, it's a feel-good story in a sense. It's unfortunate that it took 13 years to find some resolution, but this happened. We got to remember, Mt. Gox happened before there was forensic analysis. I don't think Chainalysis was even an imagination yet. And so it was a very different time than now, obviously. So do you think there's going to be any further fallout from this, or is it just kind of, okay, they're going to get rid of they're going to distribute the assets and then it's going to be a nothing burger? Kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, this happened in 2011. Those are some of the earliest people that got into crypto. So they get into crypto early. Maybe some of them, felt bad, left crypto because they lost in the Mt. Gox scandal. But my guess is a lot of people that get in that early really believed in Bitcoin, really believed in the technology. So I don't think we're having your normal retailers that are just going to get a whole bunch of money and then sell. I think a lot of them are probably going to either, keep it in a Bitcoin, or maybe they rotate it into other coins that they're more interested in now. But I think that a fair amount of percentage, I could see a fair amount of the percentage of this money coming back to the people could stay in the crypto sphere. So I don't think it's just like, hey, this is all going to be sold, because again, these are some of the earliest investors in crypto. They were there before me. And so I have to believe that a lot of them are still in the space.
In my opinion, a lot of people that had Bitcoin in 2011, you were kind of part of that cypherpunk generation, really, and it was kind of a philosophy that brought especially the early people to the space. Even myself, it was a philosophy that brought me here.
Yep.
So yeah, totally. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's interesting. Leading into the next article, which is related, of course. Apparently, the markets are a little shaky on this news. So if you want to pull up the article, that would be fantastic. Beautiful. And so essentially we talked about this already, but since the exchange decades ago, the payout now of 142,000 Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash apparently has triggered significant market reactions, according to this author, causing Bitcoin and Ethereum prices to drop sharply. The reimbursements are part of a plan to resolve claims from the 2014 hack that saw 850,000 Bitcoin sold. So one of your esteemed colleagues who's actually watching today, Agent J, said the Mt. Gox coins actually have vesting. So if that is the case, which I can't confirm nor deny, but I tend to respect Agent J quite a bit and believe he's probably right.
He is.
And if that is the case, this is all a nothing burger, although it did cause last week some turbulence in conjunction with many other things causing turbulence. Do you think that 150,000 Bitcoin, $8 billion worth of volume, given what we've said before, let's just assume that some of it's going to get offloaded. Do you think that's enough to move the market? Like, are we efficient enough as a market now, or are we still, susceptible to this?
Well, I mean, look, we'll talk about this a little bit later in Germany too, but Germany sells, Fidelity buys it up. I think if the number drops significantly enough, the institutions are going to be buying in the Bitcoin. We have a lot more buying pressure than we had previously so it was harder to eat up these types of dumps. I think that with institutions and with retail sort of starting to still continue to come into the market, there's more buyers, there's more people actually able to eat up those dumps. Again, this isn't a one-time thing. As Jay said, it's a payout over time, essentially like a vesting schedule, which makes it even less of an issue. So I don't foresee it being a big problem. I didn't worry about Germany at all. And look, we're higher now than where we were when Germany started selling. So Go figure.
I mean, there was a lot of speculation last week. I guess we could probably spend the next 45 minutes talking about it. But there's, a lot of speculation about macro headwinds, about regulatory headwinds, legislative headwinds. There's just a lot of concern, interest rate kind of chaos, let's say. I don't even know if it's chaos. There's just so many opinions on what should happen with the Fed rate, and what the impacts will be. And now here we are. A little assassination attempt, and the markets are back to normal. So maybe it was a nothing burger. I don't know. Anyways, okay. Let's move on from Mt. Gox, and we will poo-poo on the SEC for a minute because I really enjoy doing that. But anyways, an SEC leak has revealed that Wall Street companies may soon bypass the controversial crypto accounting guidelines, potentially causing significant disruptions in the Bitcoin and crypto markets. So the rule that exists currently, SAB 121 policy, requires banks to record customers' crypto holdings as liabilities, which is kind of insane. It has been contentious, and recent developments obviously suggest changes might be on the horizon. So what happened was the House of Representatives had a vote to override President Biden's veto of ending the bill, and unfortunately, they didn't quite make the cut. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the vote and some of that stuff, but is this something that you've given a lot of thought to? I mean, you instantly knew what the article was, or what the policy was. I mean, I remember when this came in and thinking, what? Like, this is ridiculous. And then thinking, whatever, it's probably not going to impact us that much. But as time has gone on, this is becoming a larger and larger problem for institutions and other enterprise on how do they manage their balance sheets, and is it a liability, and so on and so forth. So anyways, what do you think about this? Do you think this is something that should be addressed? Why are people voting against it? Why is there contention here?
Well, people are voting against it because, there's still a percentage of people in the government that don't like Bitcoin. They don't see it. They don't see that it's going to be positive for the US dollar, which I think it is. They don't see that it's going to be positive for the United States, which I think it is. Anytime that you want to continue to be on the top from a world power standpoint, first, yes, you have to have a strong military, but you have to have a very strong financial market. And if the United States doesn't start to, invest and adopt and be the leader in the crypto sphere, then they're going to have an opportunity to sort of lessen that divide between the United States and the rest of the world. And so we are starting to see a bipartisan shift in momentum, I believe, within the government to be more pro-crypto. The elections this fall might have a say in that as well. But there are still a bunch of people within the government that just have this old way of thinking. And, a lot of people just vote on party lines. So if the president says that he's going to veto it, I'm not going to vote against him, So we're starting to see, though, some people start to vote against their party. But unfortunately, we're still too partisan for too many people to step away from that.
I think the Wall Street lobby is fairly strong. I mean, for most of modern history, lobby has been one of the most powerful instruments to influence government. Right? You organize, collect a bunch of money, and then use that money to put pressure campaigns on government officials and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, these are the types of things when people vote and you're like, what? Like, how could you possibly believe that is in the best interest of the country? Unfortunately, often those things are influenced by stuff out of our control, so to speak. And I mean, the lobby has been both good and bad. There's a positive lobby also for the crypto space that, GBA and Global DCA and Blockchain Association. There's a lot of groups that are, investing in and participating in lobby, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see if we can right that ship. Okay. So, kind of building on this a little bit, the House failed to override the SEC's veto. What was interesting is they almost made the 2/3 vote. But I'll come to that in a minute. The U.S. House of Representatives failed to override President Joe Biden's veto of a bill aimed at ending the SEC's controversial crypto accounting policy known as SAB 121. Despite a strong majority vote, the turnout was insufficient to meet the 2/3 requirement needed to overturn the veto. The policy, which requires public companies to hold customers' crypto assets on their balance sheets, has been criticized for potentially increasing banks' capital demands. The SEC and the banking industry are currently negotiating potential modifications to the policy. Now, just quickly, the vote outcome was 228 in favor and 184 against. I can't remember the exact amount of seats that the Republicans have. I think it's 203 or something. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure someone will remind us. Nonetheless, there was some bipartisan support of this. Where do you think this is going to go? Are we going to kind of end run around using the SEC, so to speak? Or are we actually going to get some like legislative consistency here and someone that's going to lead the charge? What if you had to bet, what would you say we're going to see more of?
It depends on how the elections go in the fall. I mean, it's hard to keep pushing it down the road, but I don't think we're going to get a lot of clarity until we know who's going to be the next president, because it's clear that one of the two main choices is not very favorable towards crypto. And another one, at least, is talking more like he's favorable now towards crypto, or at least wants to be, because, he wants those votes. But I think there's clearly one candidate that will be better for the crypto markets. Now, both sides of the aisle don't like Gary Gensler. Both Democrats and Republicans are calling for his head. How long that'll take, who knows? I don't know how that works. I don't know how he still has a job. If I was doing a job as poorly as he was in his position, I wouldn't have a job. He's spending our money, the taxpayers' money, suing people rather than actually putting guidelines into place in how to regulate crypto. So it's like, hey, I don't want to tell you how to do this. I want you to know how to do it. And when you don't, I'm going to sue you. It's crazy. It's crazy how he's going about it. And I don't know if we'll get clarity before November or December, but we're already starting to see it momentum shift, especially in the courts. They don't just blindly assume that the SEC is this goodwill organization anymore. In fact, just the opposite, So look, I think they lost 5 out of the last crypto cases, and I don't see them winning any more in the near future.
No.
So let's see what happens. But I think Gary Gensler's on the way out, and I think that we're going to be having some change here in the near future. It's my hope anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we are seeing a little bit more global momentum, I think, towards figuring out a way to regulate this. I do want to move on to the SEC and Paxos in a second, but just prior to that, worth noting, as far as this vote goes, thanks to Agent J for reminding us of this, Chuck Schumer, surprisingly, voted against party lines on this one. So there must be some pressure in his riding as well, or his jurisdiction as well. Pretty interesting stuff. I guess we'll have to see if we can figure it out. I mean,
time will tell.
Yeah. I mean, I've been beating this drum for years saying, like, God, we just got to figure this out. It's inevitable. We might as well just accept it and figure out some regulation. But to your point, the SEC has had to tuck tail a little bit yet again. So if you remember, when was this? I can't find the date all of a sudden. Just in February 2023. So the SEC ends the Paxos stablecoin probe, signaling a win for the crypto industry. So U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has concluded its investigation into New York-based stablecoin issuer Paxos without recommending enforcement action. This decision, communicated on July 9th, comes over a year after the SEC issued a Wells notice regarding Paxos BUSD stablecoin developed in partnership with Binance. The move follows a recent legal setback for the SEC in its lawsuit against Binance and represents a significant victory for the stablecoin sector, including major players like PayPal and VanEck. Okay. I remember thinking that this was totally one of those package deal things that it was like, let's throw everything at Binance, everything we possibly can at Binance, try to get their partners to roll over and, spill the dirt, and to get everybody to build a case against Binance. I remember thinking at the time, like, this kind of seemed strange to me, the way that this Paxos investigation was happening, and they're a New York-based company. They obviously understand the rules. I just thought it was kind of strange. What do you think? Is this I mean, should there be more scrutiny around stablecoins? I mean, because there's a lot of differing opinions on this, and I'm curious as to yours.
Well, first of all, the SEC pretty much like crushed the USD. Like Paxos, because of the probe, was, I mean, if you look at the charts, it was crazy. So it's like they're like, okay, you're a threat to our government, but now that we just crashed you, you're not a threat anymore. So we don't even need to go through suing you.
Yeah, you have no money left anyways. You're just going to claim bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So yes, I guess you could say this is positive for the crypto market. I mean, Paxos literally should be very upset, and I don't know if what they can do, but at this point, again, I think that we just need to unite against the SEC and their incomprehensible decisions to continue an attack. Now, your other question about stable coins, look, for many years we know that there's some stable coins that are a little bit dangerous, and we've seen stable coins collapse. So I do think there needs to be some sort of regulation around stable coins. You have your algorithmic stable coins, you have your fiat back stable coins, you have your gold back stable coins now. So there's a lot of different types of stable coins, and how you differentiate between them and how you regulate them may have to vary. But I think some regulation, at least on a low level, I'm not for high regulations. The less the government's involved, the better. But I think there needs to be some safety net in place for some of these stable coins.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree, obviously. I think coming from TradFi, I mean, regulation was probably the number one concern, challenge, focus of our day-to-day operations. Even beyond, client servicing and all that stuff was like, how do we stay compliant? And so I just have never seen a world where there's not some version of regulation. And I think there should be a minimum acceptable standard. There's a certain level of just accountability, just of accountability and transparency around who's behind this. And if they do something negligent, that there's someone to pursue. Like, there's somewhere to go to get the situation rectified. And so hopefully we'll see that. I mean, obviously things like Terra Luna and others were just obvious, well, in hindsight, obvious Ponzi's at the time. But some crazy stuff happens, and the best we can do is try to build more robust goalposts, I guess, for the next time around. Agent J was telling us he thinks stablecoins should be heavily scrutinized. I'd like to know Tether's reserves can support their 112 billion of Tether in circulation. I think that's been questionable for like a decade, maybe not a decade, but for quite a while, because they were holding short-term Chinese commercial paper, and commercial real estate in China, and like all this crazy shit was how they were backing Tether, and for obvious reasons, that's not advisable. But yeah, hopefully we'll see
transparency, right? It needs to come back down to transparency.
Well, and that's the promise. Again, that's I think what's kind of hilarious is this. One of the core philosophies of blockchain is transparency and immutability. Like those are huge components. Yet, for some reason, in some of the largest platforms in the space, Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, stablecoin issuers, it's like a black box. There's no transparency other than maybe to regulators, but we as consumers can't see a damn thing. I have no idea now, don't get me wrong. I'm not poo-pooing on Coinbase here because Coinbase is awesome and has done a lot of good for the space. But I don't know if when I give them my assets, if, they're giving me yield on my USDC. So what are they doing? Are they selling it to buy Bitcoin, or I don't know. Anyways, so the more we can bring this stuff on chain, obviously,
and the more we can self-custody, the better.
Oh, I'm not wearing that shirt today. I was wearing my I'm a self-custody guru shirt. That would have been fitting. All right. Okay. The news that I think everybody has on their mind right now is Donald J. Trump heard a noise and then tripped on himself at one of his rallies, according to some news outlets. According to the ones that aren't lying, somebody tried to assassinate Trump and a bullet actually went through his ear. Obviously, there's these iconic photos and something that pretty much unless you live under a rock, I don't think you could have avoided hearing about. But what's interesting about this whole thing, and we could talk about the politics, and I think, Brendan, you and I could probably have some pretty thorough conversations on this. But from a crypto perspective, all of a sudden, when Trump, survived this assassination attempt at this rally in Pennsylvania, his response to the attack, like putting his fist up in the air and saying "fight," boosted investor optimism. So all these Trump-based meme coin tokens over the weekend went bananas, which is, well, I shouldn't say bananas, went up by 30 or 40 or 50%, which is kind of crazy to think. What do you think about these Trump meme coins? Like, I have a lot of FUD about meme coins in general, but this is kind of hilarious. It's almost like prediction markets in a sense. Like, you see these shit coins, and the ones that are rising is almost like indicates the same thing as a betting market,
yep.
which is kind of interesting. Trump with ear, yeah. Oh man, Ascending Man is on fire today with the jokes. But yeah, I mean, there he goes. So it's one of those like kind of crazy things. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first, I'm going to have to check my Trump NFTs and see what they're worth right now. I haven't looked at them in a while, but might as well look later today, see how that goes.
See if you're rich.
Yeah, but look, I have a lot of pros and cons with meme coins, because like a lot of money just seems to get recycled within an ecosystem, going from meme coin to meme coin, and most people aren't making money except for the founders or the VCs or the people that are getting in early or the people that were given tokens or allotments. But then there is this organic people movement, kind of like GameStop, where, this meme coin's been out for a year, never had traction. And then for some reason, the community rallies behind it. Even sometimes when it tried to be rugged or the founder rugged it, communities, band together and they rise up. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like what America is. And
there's even a phrase. There's a phrase for that on Pump Fund. I can't remember what it's called. There's a community takeover or something they call it, where the dev rugs or goes MIA, but there's a couple people in the community that say, "Hey, let's revive this thing," and they do. And some of them have gone crazy. The meme coin space kind of bends my brain a little bit. I mean, it's kind of like NFTs. I was a big critic of NFTs last cycle, not because I didn't think they were cool and not because I didn't own a whole bunch of them. But the problem is that NFTs were almost exclusively insiders. Like the mints and the pre-mints were almost always just everybody's friends. And then the marketing machine and the people buying on the market, apes at 400K, are these kids that made some money on crypto, spent it on an ape that's now worth a fraction of that. I think meme coins are like, that's how a lot of the younger generation is coming into the space. You've got $100, you can make some money. It's like extreme gambling. So if we were worried about like, gambling addiction and people being able to go to casinos and so on and so forth, this is like a casino on steroids, because the house can slap you and take your money without you knowing either. It's not just based on the odds. So, I mean, meme coins to me have always been kind of a double-edged sword. It's crappy because a lot of people get burned. It's also kind of good because it creates this kind of cultish mentality of like, we're going against the status quo, which in some cases is not bad. The status quo right now arguably isn't that great.
Look, comes down to risk management. I own some meme coins, right? But it's not a large percentage of my portfolio. We always talk about risk management on our shows. And look, you have to invest first and foremost, I think, in the projects that you believe in, and sort of your blue chip prospects, like your ETHs and your Bitcoins, and then you slowly rotate out from there. But yeah, this cycle has been a lot of pumps in meme coins. So I feel like you have to have some scratcher bets, around this space, because it could blow up. It could not. You could lose all your scratcher bets. But that's why it's a small percentage of your profile. So there's pros and cons with them. But I think that it's worth some at least paying attention to. If
people are prudent like yourself, I think that's a very solid strategy. It's like buying penny stocks with 5% of your portfolio in TradFi. Unfortunately, most of these new entrants to the market aren't looking at it that way.
They're aping.
They're aping, exactly. And I mean, they're playing, I suppose, with smaller amounts of money, probably money that is much harder to come by for them than older people. But it's not like they're going into massive debt. There's a lot of people going into massive debt to try to do this kind of stuff and gambling, and we know where that goes. So hopefully it doesn't continue in that direction. Okay, so after Trump was almost assassinated,
Really?
kind of crazy, like a bullet goes into his ear. Like imagine, like I think, who was it? Someone in the comments said, we're about a head twitch away from a massive black swan, which is exactly my thoughts on that whole thing. Like if Trump would have been assassinated, it would be the complete opposite experience for everything. Crypto would completely dump. The stock markets would completely dump. It would be economic meltdown, I think. If the
Forget about economics. I mean, that might be the least worry at that point, would be the economic market.
Yeah.
Whatever else happened in the streets, in our states, in our country, I'm very thankful that didn't happen, because the amount of I can't even fathom what would have come out of that. The
civil unrest would have been unbelievable. Like it just would have been crazy. And then even on the global stage, like it's the biggest news story in the world, obviously, at this moment. Now, on the bright side, because he did survive and did show a strong stance, I mean, his poll numbers went way up. Like people are coming out of the woodwork, celebrities and people that never would have admitted support for Trump are now all in supporting Trump. I think it's done the opposite of what the would-be assassin wanted to do, and it's made Trump orders of magnitude more appealing to a large swath of society. So as a consequence, the markets have gone back up. Obviously, we're excited to see that the assassination attempt happened on July 13th, and then Bitcoin surged the next day on July 14th, above 60K again, kind of negating some of the sliding from last week and some of the concerns. Now, there's a few other things that are probably leading to a little bit of an increase in Bitcoin. I mean, there's increasing speculation that the Fed is going to cut rates at least once by September now. I think the prediction markets are saying something like 92% probability or something. That's
in September.
By September, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you pay attention to the CME group, the Fed Watch tool.
Of course.
Yeah, so they have it held at over 90% for July, but September, last time I looked, it was very, very high.
It's crazy. Like, and so people are starting to believe a little bit more. I think people are just starting to see the writing on the wall a bit here, and hopefully we can, hopefully we can get through all this nonsense.
Let's not forget that we're summer. Summer, we expected a pullback. This isn't something that we didn't expect to begin with. So Mt. Gox, Germany, etc. This is not bad. We've been talking about, if you look at the run up from the start to 70K, how many pullbacks do we have of 20%? None. Zero. So we essentially didn't have any accumulation. We didn't have any place where we're building support. And we didn't have any pullbacks, which are generally healthy if you want a long-term market to move in the upward to the right direction. So overall, I think this has really been really healthy for the market, and something that we needed if we continue to want to build a solid foundation to move up further, as we expect. So,
I love the positive kind of interpretation of this. I think, if you're same thing, if you're looking at fractals or comparing current cycles to previous cycles, almost invariably there's a fairly sizable dump after the initial run up. There's usually some kind of crabbing a little bit after that, and then we see kind of the final, not final, but the next meaningful rise. Ideally, this time we'll see some altcoins, DeFi, some other stuff pump other than just Bitcoin and ETH. But
hey, they're the leaders, and then everything hopefully rolls back. I mean, look, we don't really expect the altcoins to pump until BTC and ETH really take off. So I think you see profits rotate from BTC and ETH into alts, especially people in the space. We did have a mini alt meme season here in 2024. Yeah. But I don't think we're going to get the true alt season until next year. I mean, that's sort of how the 4-year cycle has been in the past. So if we stick to the 4-year cycle as we've seen the last 3 times, I mean, there's no reason that won't happen.
I'm going to hold you to that. I need an alt season. And I'd love to see it go into next year. So let's go. Not financial advice. That's hilarious. Okay, so we had one other article. I'm not gonna go to it. We'll just comment on it a little bit because we've talked about it already. Now that the German government has stopped selling Bitcoin, we both, I think, agreed that them selling Bitcoin didn't really matter or impact the markets. Now that they've stopped, do we care?
It was funny. Somebody sent Germany a transaction today. I think it was today, of $3.07 of Bitcoin. But in it, they wrote "F you." I'm not going to say the whole thing, but it was hilarious. So I don't know if that was you. I don't know if that was you or not, but good looks if you did.
It was. You caught me. That I wish that was me. That's freaking hilarious. What are my favorite alts? I'm a little biased, Agent J. I'll put this up there. He's asking what my favorite alts are. I mean, I'm a little biased because we have quite a few protocols that are alts. So, I mean, I'm a little biased towards our projects, of course, because I hold an exorbitant amount of them. I'm a pretty big fan currently of a few of the Bitcoin L2s, specifically Core. I know Core team very well, and they're doing some really incredible stuff. They just got listed on Binance, or not Binance, Coinbase, and a few other things. And great group. Really, I'm really interested in kind of the Bitcoin DeFi market and how that may evolve. I mean, there's 30 L2s apparently that were all announced in the last 6 months, most of them garbage. There's a couple that are going to remain, and Core is one that I'm particularly interested in. A good friend of mine started a protocol called Renzo, and if you're familiar with restaking, it's one of the larger restaking platforms on EigenLayer. I'm quite bullish on that for a few reasons. A, I know the founders deeply. B, I know what their roadmap looks like. And they've had incredible traction so far. So I'm a big fan of that. It will be interesting to see what happens with the AVSs on EigenLayer. I'm also somewhat interested in that. None of note yet, but it's an area I'm paying attention to. The jury's still out on whether restaking is actually all that it's cracked up to be, and whether it's actually as secure as you think. But that's where all the money's going right now, is in restaking, shared security, trying to figure out how to conquer the multi-chain situation. Yeah. What about you, man? I'm interested, Brendan. What are your hot alts right now? What are you paying attention to?
You know, the first thing I'll say is anytime that new protocols come out that's doing something for me, moving my money from one place to another, I generally am a little bit worried. I always kind of want to be able to have less ways of, potential mishaps. And so I try to stick as much as possible to things. But yeah, engine, yeah, pretty good. Something on Coinbase is Base is kind of interesting right now, what they're building there. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of coins. I don't have any specific, but I just think Base in general, I mean, it's kind of an altcoin, is could potentially see some big just because of how big Coinbase is and the opportunities that they have compared to other places. So Base is big. People that know me know that I am a bit bullish long term next couple of years on like Pulse Chain, but that depends on the Richard Hart case, which I think he'll probably win because the SEC takes a lot of L's in court. And if he's not a security,
let's hope they take another one.
Yeah, if he's not a security, I don't know how a fork of that could be a security. So I'm big on it, especially because you can buy it really cheap right now. And things that are generally have a big following, a big community, they can buy cheap. Generally pretty good.
Agent J says Aerodrome, let's go. Aerodrome. Largest DEX on Base. And it's a great DEX, actually. I've used it a lot. One of the protocols that we established is called Moonwell. And it started on Moonbeam and has moved to Base and is the largest lending protocol on Base. Yep. They're doing some really cool cross-chain stuff at Moonwell now. And yeah, I'm totally with you. Base is great, especially because of the efficiency between Coinbase, which is most North Americans now that it's in Canada, kind of the on-off ramp, the ultimate kind of home base, pun intended. And now all of a sudden we've got this on-chain ecosystem that is so tightly connected. It works pretty cool. It's a pretty cool use of their leverage as the largest centralized exchange to try to build the largest L2. I'm with you. I think Base is going to be pretty cool. All right, guys. we could probably go on forever. And maybe what we'll have to do, so we're doing every second Friday now, we do something called FUD with Friends. And so we pick a topic, Ceara and I, and usually two other people that are somewhat experts in the field, so to speak, in whatever topic we're talking about, come on. And we're just trying to pick people's brains. So maybe we'll have to have a couple of you guys from Degen Roundtable on one of our next ones to just talk about, exciting projects, altcoins, some of these smaller ecosystems that don't get much coverage. Maybe we can do a bit of a trip around the crypto world and kind of.
We'd love it.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is a lot of fun. No, we'd definitely be up for that. So. Beauty.
Well, Brendan, thanks, man. We'll have to get together. We just found out in the green room prior to this that we both live like 10 minutes apart from each other. So we'll have to definitely get together and solve the world's problems. For everybody that's watching, thank you guys for your time. I know there's millions of places that you could be directing your attention, and you shared it with us today, and we're grateful for that. Hopefully we return the favor with value. We are here every Monday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, to do the weekend and weekly news roundup, which is exactly what you saw today. Every second Friday, FUD with Friends. Like, share, subscribe, press the bell, do all that crazy fun stuff. And with that, I say to you, Brendan, go FUD yourself, my friend.
With that, I have to say, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.